Welcome back. In this video I will work on this computer. If I remove the top, then you will see this one is a Computit UK101. This is a clone of the Ohio Scientific SuperBoard II, or it is better to say this board is the clone, because this computer looks really a homemade stuff. But if you check out what is in front of me, it is quite simple. Here is the power section, and here is one more part, but it is not fixed to the case, so yeah, I need to fix it. There is some storage, so I can open it somehow. Yeah, and then this is the main board and the keyboard. And of course I have few switches for the tape and for the computer and the monitor. So the first step will be cleaning. So I will clean this mess. I will use some compressed air, and then I will bring it back alive. I spent some time with the machine to clean it, but it is still a little bit dirty. It is not because I'm lazy, but because I'm not brave enough. I do not remove the keyboard because I'm afraid of it, so I just cleaned it as much as I could. But I removed the front panel, also this cover. That way I can show you a little bit more about this computer. So what do we have here? I already talked about the PSU. Also, here we have some section which belongs to the PSU. These are the turning on and off switches. We have the cassette tape, and the cassette tape is not working. I won't remove it right now because the belt is off. It is too loose. And what we have here is 8 KB of memory. So here we have 21/14. Each memory is 1 × 4 KB. So altogether this is 1 KB, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have the ROMs here and one EPROM. I think this one is for the monitor. What else? The CPU. This is a 6502. And that's it. It is a quite simple machine. What I need to do is just put it together and turn it on. There was one glitch. I already soldered back this wire because it was loosened. So what I can do is connect the power and turn it on. Okay, the power is connected, and now I can turn it on here on the front. So what I should be able to measure is 5 volt on the TTL ICs. So this one is the ground, and here we have 4.9192. So I think that's fine. We do not need negative 12 or plus 12 voltage because we do not use dynamic RAM ICs. These ICs can use just 5 volt, so they don't require additional voltage. The computer should work, but I need to figure out how to get the video output. As you can see, I already prepared the oscilloscope. It is because I read the manual for this motherboard, and it states that there is a video output on this J2 and on the last pin. What is funny, the right one is the first one and the 12th is the leftmost one. This is just the opposite way as usual. So what I just need to do is connect the scope. What I'm gonna do is I connect it here and I just push it here. Okay, so as you can see, I have the signal. The size of the signal is somewhere around 3 volts or a little bit below 3 volts. This is because the output is coming from the TTL ICs, so I need to divide it back to my monitors. But otherwise it looks fine because this frequency, which is approximately 15.6 kHz, it is just what I expected for the vertical sync signal. If you wonder why I do have these peaks appearing and disappearing, this is just because If there is something on the screen, then there are those peaks, otherwise it's empty, and it is just wobbling because I'm not holding properly the ground signal. Otherwise it looks doable. I just need a resistor here and connect the video signal to this connector instead of the modulator. But if I'm talking about the modulator, let's discuss the other parts of the video generator. So I have this EEPROM here. This is responsible for the characters. So this is storing the characters. This is the character ROM. And I have two 0.5 kilobyte chips. So altogether, these two are 1 kilobyte. So this is the screen memory. Unfortunately, I hit the wall because I started to repair the computer. I had something on the screen, but it was not working properly. Finally, I figured out that there was some problem in the addressing logic for the memories. So I just replaced one of the TTL ICs. After that, I had something on the screen, but it was still not working. Then I started to remove these ICs belonging to the keyboard, and after that it started to give a prompt. It looked really nice, and then I just started to measure the keyboard itself as I inserted back the TTL ICs one by one. Luckily there are pairs, so I was able to swap them, but unfortunately it was not a problem on the IC level, so all the 4 ICs are fine, but I have problem with the keyboard. I do not think it was caused by the cleaning, because there are multiple jammed keys. I've removed this shift lock because this is one of them, or maybe one of the shifts, and there is one more row. Then I removed these 2 diodes, and after that I received again a blinking prompt. But the computer was not really stable. It was frozen after a few seconds. Based on my experience, 2 things can cause such issue. One is overheating. The other one is some not properly seated IC. So I started to remove the CPU, and my idea was to remove then the EEPROMs, clean the legs, the pins, and then push them back. But I was pretty lucky because after I removed the CPU, cleaned it, and inserted back to the socket, the computer is just working fine. I mean, I do not say fine because still I have jammed keys. I can figure out if I remove these resistors which one of those are failing, but the problem is that even if I figure out, for example, the D and H are failing, then I still do not have any replacement for the switches. So I stop here, and instead of continue the repair of this machine, I will talk about its history. This machine is from 1979. I can firmly state that because of 2 things. The first one is this is when they cloned the Ohio Scientific SuperBoard II, which was released in the autumn of 1978. And also, if we look at the manufacturing dates or weeks of the TTL ICs and the CPU, EEPROMs and whatsoever, then it is easy to spot all of them were made somewhere in 79 in Q3. So probably the assembly of this computer happened somewhere in late 79. And when I'm talking about the assembly of the computer, then I need to note that Computit sold not just ready-to-use boards, but also kits. It was possible to buy even pieces or circuits of this computer, so you could buy the PCB or the CPU or the memories whatsoever. I even have a price list for that. Approximately they produced 5,000 units, which is not that much. If I compare the technical aspects of this board to the earlier Trinity, then I can say that it is quite close to the TRS-80 Model 1. The resolution was somewhat weaker. It was able to display 48 characters in a line, and 16 lines on the screen. The video output is black and white with 256 semi-graphic characters. If you know the original Trash 80 Model 1, this computer is a bit better because it was able to produce all the 256 characters, so capital characters, at the same time, while the Trash 80 was not able to do that. While the specification is comparable to the TRS-80, there was a big gap in the software side. The TRS-80 was released in 1977, and when this computer was released, it had already somewhat bigger software library, and there is always this avalanche effect. If you have a computer with more software, then the people will buy this computer, so there will be more computer, and then more developer, and then more software, and so on and so on. I think the Computit was not a bad computer. There were even articles how to expand its capability, add more memory or expand the screen. So at the end, this computer was used by hobbyists or engineers, students with some electrical engineering or electronical background. Because of the low volume, it is very hard to find programs for this computer. Luckily, there are still few collectors, and even they developed an emulator. Okay, that's all I can tell you about this computer. I hope you enjoyed this video. Next time I will return with another computer from the United Kingdom. Wish you a nice day. Goodbye.